the man who wrote the undisputed Bible of personal finance, a book that sold over 44 million copies, teaching everyday people how to build wealth. Well, he recently admitted something pretty crazy.
Oh, yeah. It's quite the admission.
Right. He said on a broadcast that he is over $1 billion in debt. 1.2 billion, to be exact.
It is, it's just a staggering paradox, isn't it?
It really is. And welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a really comprehensive, like an absolute microscope to the concept of financial literacy and modern wealth building.
And we are doing this specifically for you, the listener, to give you the blueprint for financial independence that you likely never got in school.
Exactly. Because it forces us to critically evaluate not just the source of the financial advice we consume, but, the very mechanics of how wealth is generated and retained today.
Right. How does a supposed financial genius end up $1 billion in the hole?
Yeah, and more importantly, how can you avoid those same pitfalls? So to figure all this out, we have an incredible stack of sources on the table today.
We really do. It's a highly robust collection.
Yeah, so we're pulling from macro-level academic research published in the International Journal of Creative Research Thoughts, the IJCRT, and also Larapi Commons.
And those investigate the societal impacts of financial education, right?
Exactly. And then to dissect the legendary 1997 classic Rich Dad, Poor Dad, we've got these really sharp, critical industry reviews from Brevo Capital, Investment News, and Kotak Neo.
Which is great because we are spanning from massive global academic data sets all the way down to highly tactical stuff.
Right. And finally, to bring everything completely up to date, we are breaking down a comprehensive 2026 Coursera guide on building digital passive income.
So we're moving from theory straight into modern applications for the individual.
Exactly. So the mission for this deep dive is very clear. We want to extract the timeless foundational truths about building wealth.
And we're going to actively separate those truths from the outdated or, frankly, dangerous financial guru hype.
Yeah, dangerous is definitely the word. By the end of this conversation, we want to give you a practical, modern blueprint for acquiring assets in the economic reality of 2026.
It's really about finding out what actually works when the economic landscape, the interest rates, the technology shifts completely beneath our feet.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we even get into the mechanics of how to build wealth or like dissecting where this guru playbook might be falling apart with billion-dollar debts, we have to start at the beginning.
Right, the root cause.
Yeah. We need to establish exactly why it is so difficult for most people to get ahead in the first place.
Which is a huge question.
It is. And the reason we even turn to these pop finance books, the reason a book like Rich Dad, Poor Dad sells 44 million copies is rooted in causality. Our systemic financial education is just fundamentally broken.
It's a complete void. And that is precisely what the academic data reveals.
So what did the studies actually show?
Well, if we look at the study from the International Journal of Creative Research Thoughts, they didn't just, poll a few people on the street.
Right, it was much bigger than that.
Way bigger. They utilized massive multinational data sets, specifically the World Bank Global Findex and the OECD Financial Literacy Surveys.
Oh, wow. So we're talking global data.
Exactly. And their findings are unequivocal. There is a direct, undeniable, positive correlation between financial literacy and personal wealth accumulation.
But wait, isn't wealth just about making a huge salary?
See, that's the misconception, and I want to be very precise here. It is not just about earning a high salary.
Right, because we've all heard those stories.
Exactly. We have all heard stories of lottery winners or high-earning athletes who just go completely bankrupt.
Right, they make millions and then it's gone in 3 years.
Exactly. So it is about possessing the specific mechanical knowledge of how money operates once it actually enters your bank account.
And that knowledge is definitely not distributed equally. The study gets into the demographics, and it's pretty sobering.
It really is. The data shows severe systemic disparities.
Like, who specifically is getting left behind?
Well, if you are under 30, if you come from a low-income household, or if you have limited formal education, you are statistically at a severe disadvantage.
Just simply due to low financial literacy.
Precisely. These demographic groups often lack basic exposure to standard financial products. They aren't taught the mechanics of compound interest or, the silent erosion caused by inflation.
Or even how to mitigate risk by diversifying assets, right?
Exactly. And the result is a measurable generational vulnerability.
Which brings up the law e common source. They make a really compelling argument here, too.
They do. What stood out to you?
Well, they argue that leaving financial education entirely up to parents essentially breeds economic instability and financial inequality.
Oh, absolutely.
Because think about it, right? If your parents didn't know how to navigate the financial system, if they lived paycheck to paycheck, how on earth are they supposed to teach you how to build a stock portfolio?
They can't teach what they don't know.
Exactly. It's like navigating the modern economy without financial literacy is like being forced to play a high-stakes board game where only half the players were ever taught the rules.
That's a great analogy.
Right. And then you, the player who was kept totally in the dark, you're being blamed for losing the game.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, financial illiteracy doesn't just hurt the individual player who doesn't know the rules.
Wait, how so?
Well, it weakens the economic fabric of entire communities and nations.
Really? How does my neighbor, not knowing how a mortgage works, affect the broader economy?
It's all about systemic fragility. When large segments of the population lack financial literacy, we see an increased reliance on high-interest debt.
Oh, wait, payday loans.
Payday loans,
Right.
maxed out credit cards, exactly. People use them just to survive minor emergencies.
Yeah.
We also see abysmal savings rates.
Right, because there's no buffer.
Exactly. And on a macro level, this lowers our collective economic resilience to systemic shocks. Take the Silicon Valley Bank, or SVB, panic back in 2023 that the sources reference.
Right, I remember that. But what exactly happened there mechanically? Because a lot of people just remember the headlines about a bank collapsing over a weekend.
Yeah, it was chaotic. So mechanically, SVB had invested a massive amount of their depositors' cash into long-term government bonds.
Okay, and bonds are usually safe, right?
They are generally safe, yes. But they have something called duration risk.
Duration risk, what does that mean?
Well, when the Federal Reserve rapidly raised interest rates in 2022 and 2023, the value of those older, lower-yielding bonds plummeted.
Ah, because new bonds were paying out more, so no one wanted the old ones.
Exactly. So SVB was sitting on huge unrealized losses. Then tech companies, which were their primary clients, started burning through cash and needed to pull their deposits.
So the bank had to give their money back.
Right. SVB had to sell those older bonds at a massive loss just to give people their cash.
And once people realized the bank was taking losses, the panic started.
Precisely. But here is where the financial literacy aspect comes in. A bank run is fundamentally a psychological event driven by a lack of understanding of risk.
Wait, so the panic was unwarranted?
For most people, yes. Most individual depositors were fully insured by the FDIC up to $250,000.
Meaning their money was perfectly safe regardless of what happened to the bank's bond portfolio.
Exactly safe. But panic is contagious. A population without a grounding in how banking mechanics, insurance, and interest rates work is a fragile population.
Because they react purely on emotion.
Exactly, which just exacerbates the crisis.
So for you listening, why should you care about this macro data? Why does it matter that the OECD thinks financial literacy is low?
It's a fair question to ask.
Right, because realizing that the system wasn't designed to teach you this stuff is actually incredibly freeing. It shifts the burden.
It definitely removes the stigma.
Yeah, it moves you away from this sense of personal guilt, this internal monologue of, oh, I'm just bad with money. And it moves you toward active empowerment.
You aren't intrinsically bad with money, you just weren't taught the rules of the board game.
Exactly. But once you realize that, you can learn them.
Recognizing the systemic failure is the necessary first step in taking personal ownership of your financial trajectory.
Which perfectly explains why a vacuum existed in the 1990s. Because the public school system failed to teach financial literacy, a huge void was created.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Totally. And in 1997, stepping right into that void was a self-published book with a bright purple and yellow cover, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
A cultural phenomenon.
Right. It sold tens of millions of copies because people were literally starving for the rules of the game.
Yeah.
So we really need to dissect its core tenets to see what lessons actually work and, why it became such a massive hit.
Well, the central narrative of the book is brilliantly constructed because it's built on a direct contrast.
The two dads.
Exactly. Kiyosaki presents two father figures. The poor dad, who is his biological father, a highly educated government employee, represents conventional wisdom.
Which is what? Go to school and get a job.
Right. Get a good education, get a safe, secure job, and work hard for a salary.
Okay, and the rich dad.
The rich dad, his best friend's father, an entrepreneur with little formal education, represents the mindset of the wealthy.
And the fundamental rule that separates them as highlighted in both the Kotak Neo analysis and the original text, is a massive shift in perspective regarding work.
It's the core thesis of the book.
Right. The poor and middle class work for money, while the rich figure out how to put their money to work for them.
It is a total paradigm shift. And the foundation of that entire shift rests on how you define two very simple words: assets and liabilities.
Now, I know accountants might pull their hair out at this, but Kiyosaki's definition is incredibly simple. He strips away all the complex jargon.
He really does.
He says, an asset is something that puts money in your pocket, whether you work or not. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. Full stop.
He focuses the reader's attention entirely on one thing: cash flow.
Is the item generating cash or is it consuming cash?
Exactly. And the Kotak Neo source gives this great mathematical example of how this mindset plays out over time if you actually apply it.
Oh yeah, the savings rate math. Let's break that down.
Let's do it. They look at savings rates and compounding interest. Let's say you have an annual salary of $50,000.
Okay, pretty standard.
If you can somehow discipline yourself to save 50% of that, which means you are living on $25,000 a year, which is intense.
Very intense, yeah.
But let's just follow the math for a second. You invest that $25,000 every year into an asset that yields a 12% return.
Okay, so 12% a year. What happens?
In 20 years, you don't just have the $500,000 you saved. Because of compounding, you yield roughly $2.1 million.
Wow, 2.1 million.
Yes. It's the compounding power of putting money to work instead of just hoarding it or spending it.
But achieving that requires immense discipline, right?
Unbelievable discipline. It requires prioritizing the acquisition of assets over the acquisition of consumer goods.
You have to delay gratification.
Exactly, which is arguably the hardest psychological hurdle in all of personal finance.
Speaking of gratification, there's this incredible anecdote in the sources that perfectly illustrates how to hack that psychology. It's about Robert's wife, Kim Kiyosaki, and a sailboat.
Ah, yes. The sailboat story is classic.
Right, so she really, really wanted this beautiful 60-foot sailboat in Hawaii. Now, under normal circumstances, a giant boat is the ultimate financial liability.
Oh, absolutely.
It's literally a hole in the water that you pour money into. You have docking fees, constant saltwater maintenance, insurance, crew costs. It takes money out of your pocket every single month.
By the book's own strict definition, a personal boat is a massive cash-draining liability.
Exactly. But instead of saying, I can't afford this, which Kiyosaki argues shuts down your brain and lets you off the hook, they ask a different question.
How can I afford this?
Yes, how can I afford this? That question forces your brain to work. So what did they do? They didn't just buy the toy.
No, they got creative.
They bought the boat, but they immediately put it into a commercial charter company. So when they weren't personally using it, it was being rented out for tourist cruises around the Hawaiian Islands.
Which completely flips the cash flow.
Right. The mechanics of it are brilliant.
Yeah.
The income from the charter business paid for the docking fees, the maintenance, the loan payment, and then generated a profit on top.
They literally turned a massive liability into a cash-flowing asset.
It's such a brilliant psychological trick. Instead of just blowing money on a toy and accepting the financial drain, they figured out how to make the toy pay for itself.
It transforms sheer consumption into an investment opportunity. And it proves that the nature of an object, whether it's a boat, a house, or a car, isn't what makes it an asset or a liability.
It's how you utilize it.
Exactly. It is how you utilize it that dictates its financial classification.
But wait, I have to push back here. Because speaking of houses, Kiyosaki famously says throughout the book that your primary house, the home you live in, is a liability, not an asset.
He does, and it's controversial.
Right, because that completely defies traditional accounting. If I go to a bank for a loan, my home equity is a huge part of my net worth calculation on their balance sheet. Isn't he technically just wrong about that?
Technically, yes. From a strict, generally accepted accounting principles standpoint, a house you own is an asset on your balance sheet. Its value contributes to your net worth.
So why does he say it's a liability?
However, if we look at the pedagogical genius of what he's doing, he is absolutely right in terms of behavioral finance.
How so? Because equity's equity, right?
Equity is equity on paper, but equity doesn't pay the bills.
Oh, I see where you're going.
For the average person, a primary residence aggressively consumes cash. Every single month, you pay a mortgage, you pay property taxes, you pay for a new roof when it leaks, you pay insurance, and you pay utilities.
Cash is constantly flowing out of your pocket.
Exactly. By forcing his readers to categorize the primary home as a liability, he strips away the dangerous illusion that simply owning a home makes you financially independent.
Oh, because so many people think, I bought a house, I'm wealthy now, and they just stop investing completely.
Exactly. It rewires how everyday people view consumption. It forces them to focus strictly on cash flow rather than a static net worth number on paper, because, as the saying goes, you can't buy groceries with your home equity.
That makes total sense. You can't eat your house's equity, but you still have to pay the plumber when the pipe bursts.
Precisely.
So the psychological mindset of the book, focusing on cash flow, asking, how can I afford this, is genuinely brilliant. But if we accept that the psychology is sound, we still have to do a major reality check.
A very necessary reality check.
Because we are sitting in 2026, and the specific tactical advice in that 1997 book, it's dangerously anchored in the past. We really need to pivot to the modern critiques to protect you, the listener, from outdated strategies.
This is a crucial pivot. The Brevo Capital and Investment News reviews are particularly sharp on this point. We have to look at the macroeconomic conditions of when the book was written versus today.
Right, let's talk about the real estate market.
Kiyosaki's primary vehicle for building wealth in his examples is heavily leveraged physical real estate. In 1997, when he was writing about his successes in the Phoenix, Arizona market, residential starter homes were roughly $150,000.
Wow.
And standard mortgage rates were hovering around 5%.
Right, so the math worked perfectly back then. You could put a 10% or 20% down payment on a $150,000 house, which is, totally manageable for a middle-class family.
Very manageable.
You get a tenant in there, and because the purchase price and the interest rate were relatively low, the rent you collected would easily cover the mortgage, the taxes, and leave you with a few $100s a month in positive cash flow.
Precisely. The asset column grew effortlessly. But contrast that with the 2026 reality.
It's a completely different world.
It is. The sources point out that median homes in those exact same target markets are now $450,000 or more.
And mortgage rates have normalized between 6.5 and 7.5%.
Exactly.
So let's run that modern math. If you follow the 1997 playbook today, and you buy a $450,000 house at 7% interest with a minimal down payment, your monthly mortgage, plus taxes and insurance, is going to be astronomically high.
It really is.
It's going to absolutely dwarf whatever market rent you can reasonably collect from a tenant. You won't be making a few $100s a month.
Yeah. No, you'll be bleeding $1,000 a month just to keep the property afloat.
Exactly. Standard leverage rentals simply no longer cash flow in most major markets unless you are bringing massive amounts of capital to the table.
Like how much?
Often requiring 40% or even 50% as a down payment just to break even on cash flow.
That's insane.
So if a young person reads the book today and follows the real estate advice literally, they will likely end up acquiring a massive liability that drains their monthly income.
All well disguised as a wealth-building asset.
Exactly.
And it's not just the real estate math that hasn't aged well. The sources really dismantled the book's intense anti-employee bias.
Oh yes, the framing of W-2 workers.
Right. Throughout the book, anyone with a W-2 job is painted as kind of a sucker. The narrative is that the tax code is rigged against employees, and you absolutely must be a business owner or an investor to win.
Which, again, reflects the era it was written in, but ignores the evolution of modern compensation. All right, the Brevo Capital Review notes that in 2026, the tech industry and corporate structures have completely changed the game.
How so?
They use the example of a W-2 software engineer earning $400,000 in total compensation.
That's a massive salary.
It is, and that person is getting a base salary, fully paid premium health insurance, a 401k match, which is literally free money, and most importantly, restricted stock units, or RSUs.
And we should define RSUs because they are a perfect example of a modern asset.
Yep, please break that down.
When a company grants you restricted stock units, they are compensating you with actual shares of the company's stock, which vest over a certain period of time.
So you don't buy them, you just earn them by working there.
Exactly. As those shares vest, you own them outright. If the company grows, your equity grows. You are participating in the capital gains of the business without the risk of being the founder.
So this W-2 employee, who the book would call a poor dad sucker, is automatically acquiring cash-flowing, appreciating assets every single quarter just by doing their job.
Yes, and they are objectively wealthier and taking on far less stress and financial risk than a small business owner working 70-hour weeks.
Right, the guy taking out personal loans to keep the lights on and struggling to meet payroll. The binary employee equals bad, entrepreneur equals good framing is completely broken for today's high-skill economy.
It's an essential correction. W-2 employment can be an incredibly powerful wealth-building tool if the surplus income, whether it's RSUs or just a high salary, is systematically directed into acquiring assets.
So what does this all mean for the author himself? Because we have to talk about the controversies surrounding Kiyosaki today, which are honestly hard to ignore.
They are very
We
prominent.
mentioned the billion-dollar debt hook at the beginning, but there's a whole trail here. The sources bring up the Rich Global LLC bankruptcy in 2012.
Yes, where his company had $26 million in liabilities and only $1.8 million in assets after losing a lawsuit.
That's a massive shortfall.
It is, and there have been class action lawsuits regarding the high-pressure sales tactics used at his expensive real estate seminars.
Right. The sources mentioned the seminars are frequently criticized for upselling attendees into progressively more expensive courses.
Sometimes costing tens of thousands of dollars without delivering commensurate actionable value.
And then there is his own recent podcast claim of being $1.2 billion in debt. He famously justified it by saying, "If I go bust, the bank goes bust. Not my problem."
It's a very cavalier attitude toward debt.
He claims it's good debt, used to buy assets like gold and silver, but the sheer scale of it is wild. Plus, his market predictions have become increasingly erratic.
Yes, the Bitcoin predictions.
Right, he predicted Bitcoin would hit $350,000 by a specific date, and when it missed by a mile, he casually revised his prediction down to $180,000.
It creates a severe credibility crisis.
Exactly. We have a financial literacy guru who advises everyday people against saving cash, dismisses traditional 401ks as garbage, and boasts about holding massive systemic debt.
All while making his actual fortune not from real estate, but from selling his personal brand and seminars to the public. What's fascinating here is the absolute necessity of separating the art from the artist.
Right.
Or in this case, separating the foundational psychological framework from the guru's modern persona and tactical advice.
But how do you separate them when the guru is telling you to do things that the math proves will bankrupt you in 2026?
Because the core psychological principles of the original 1997 text remain robust and mathematically sound.
Which principles specifically?
Understanding the direction of cash flow, prioritizing the acquisition of assets over liabilities, and forcing your mind to figure out how to afford things.
Ah, right. The psychology.
We know from behavioral finance that fear and greed drive almost all market mistakes. People panic sell their index funds during market downturns out of fear, and they FOMO buy into crypto bubbles out of greed.
Which Kiyosaki warns against.
Exactly. His early advice on mastering those emotions, on not letting fear dictate your employment or investment choices, is still incredibly valuable.
So the foundation is solid rock, even if the house built on top of it currently has a leaky roof and a billion-dollar mortgage.
Precisely. The investment news analysis makes this point beautifully.
What do they say?
The true asset you should take away from reading a book like that isn't a mandate to blindly follow a guru's specific asset picks.
Like heavily leveraged physical real estate or a specific cryptocurrency.
Right. The true asset is the financial education itself. It is the mental framework of thinking differently about how money flows through your life.
Okay, I love that. But if we accept that the Kiyosaki real estate model is essentially dead for the average beginner today because of interest rates and housing costs, what is the 2026 equivalent?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Right. If the core philosophy of acquiring assets is timeless, how does the listener actually build an asset today without a massive trust fund?
That is the exact question we need to answer. We have to transition from historical theory to modern execution.
Okay, let's do it.
And that's where we bring in the 2026 Coursera Guide on modern passive income. To understand how to build modern assets, we first need to formally define what passive income actually is.
Because a lot of people think passive income just means making money easily, which is totally false.
Very false. According to the IRS definitions cited in the Coursera Guide, passive activities formally include trade or business activities in which you do not materially participate on a continuous and substantial basis, or rental activities.
Okay, let's contrast that with active income to make it crystal clear.
Good idea.
Active income is your day job, It's freelancing. It's driving for Uber. In all of those scenarios, your income is directly tied to your time.
You are trading hours for dollars.
Right. If you stop working, if you turn off the Uber app, the money stops instantly. Passive income is completely different. It's about doing the heavy lifting up front to create a system or a product so you can collect payments over a long period of time with minimal ongoing maintenance.
But there is a significant hurdle that stops most people.
What's that?
Building passive income traditionally requires significant financial capital. If you don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy an apartment building or a massive dividend stock portfolio, how do you even begin?
Right. That's the trap.
The Coursera source addresses this reality directly. If you lack financial capital, you must substitute it with what we call sweat equity.
Sweat equity. I like that.
You have to invest your time, your specialized skills, and your creativity heavily upfront.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because building digital passive income today is exactly like writing a hit pop song.
Let's expand on this because the mechanics are identical.
Think about a musician in a recording studio. They spend months locked in that room, pouring in their sweat equity. They are tweaking the lyrics, getting the bass line right, recording vocal takes.
It's grueling work.
And during those months, they aren't getting paid a single dime for any of those hours. It is pure sweat equity.
The active labor phase yields zero immediate return.
Right. But once that song is perfected, recorded, and released, the paradigm shifts. In 1997, they needed a massive record label, which is capital, to press millions of physical CDs, ship them on trucks, and put them in stores.
That required huge overhead.
Huge. But in 2026, Spotify or Apple Music distributes that asset globally at zero marginal cost. The artist earns royalties while they sleep, every single time that digital file is streamed anywhere in the world.
Which is incredible.
When you build a digital asset today, you are building the exact equivalent of a hit song.
That expanded analogy perfectly captures the modern mechanism of wealth generation. The initial labor is high, but the marginal cost of distribution is near zero thanks to the internet.
Exactly.
In the modern digital economy, the barrier to entry for creating these assets has dropped almost entirely. Anyone with a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection can create a digital product and distribute it globally.
But wait, if anyone can do it, doesn't that mean the market is completely saturated? If the barrier to entry is zero, isn't it impossible to get noticed?
That is the exact trade-off. Because the barrier to entry is so incredibly low, the barrier to success is much higher. You are competing globally.
So how do you win?
Success requires high-leveraged skills. You can't just put out a mediocre product and expect it to sell. This ties beautifully back to Rule 8 from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which remains entirely relevant. Work to learn, not to earn.
Meaning you take jobs or projects specifically to learn how algorithms work, how marketing works, how copywriting works.
Precisely. You have to acquire the specialized skills necessary to make your digital assets stand out in a crowded marketplace. You aren't constrained by capital anymore. You are constrained by your skill level and your ability to capture attention.
Which brings us to the absolute practical application of this deep dive. Let's move from theory to building a customized playbook for 2026.
The actionable steps.
Exactly. The Coursera source lists 11 specific, actionable passive income streams. We are going to systematically walk through every single one of them.
Dedicating time to the mechanics, the pros, the cons, and the exact sweat equity required.
Right. We can look at these 11 streams as 4 different routes you can take to build your asset column.
Let's begin with the first route, which we classify as the traditional route. This comprises the first 2 ideas from the guide: financial investments and rental properties.
Okay, hit me with idea number 1.
Idea number 1, financial investments, refers to the stock market, mutual funds, index funds, and bonds. The mechanics here are straightforward. You buy a share of a profitable company or a basket of companies.
The pros are obvious. Over a long enough time horizon, the stock market has historically always gone up. It offers high growth potential, dividend payouts, and requires practically zero sweat equity or maintenance once the money is invested.
It is the absolute truest form of passive income.
But the cons are significant for beginners, right?
Yes. You need upfront capital to start. You can't invest sweat equity into the S&P 500. You need cash.
True.
Furthermore, you are subject to extreme market volatility. If a recession hits, your portfolio could drop 20% in a month, and you have limited short-term liquidity if your money is tied up and you suddenly need it.
Idea number 2 is rental properties, which we've touched on. Buying physical real estate, again, a fantastic long-term investment. Tenants pay down your mortgage while the property ideally appreciates in value.
But the cons in 2026 are brutal.
We talked about this. You need massive upfront capital for down payments and closing costs.
And unless you hire a property management company which eats into your profits, it is not truly passive. You are responsible for maintenance, finding tenants, and fixing toilets at 2 a.m.
So if you lack that initial capital, or you don't want the headaches of physical property management, you must pivot. That brings us to the second category, the digital product route.
This is where sweat equity replaces financial capital. Idea number 3 is starting a print-on-demand shop.
I love the mechanics of print on demand.
No.
How does this actually work under the hood?
Platforms like Printful or Gelato have massive industrial printing facilities. They integrate directly with your digital storefront, whether that's on Shopify or Etsy.
Okay.
Your job, your sweat equity, is to create highly appealing original designs for t-shirts, mugs, posters, or phone cases. You upload the digital design file to the platform.
And when a customer visits my Etsy store and buys a t-shirt, what happens?
The order is automatically routed to Printful's facility. They print your design onto a blank shirt, package it, and ship it directly to the customer under your brand name. You never touch the physical product.
That is wild. So the pros are that you literally hold zero inventory. There are no boxes of unsold extra large t-shirts piled up in your garage.
Exactly.
But the con is that you still have to market it, right?
Absolutely. The margin is thinner because the printing partner takes a cut, and you are competing in a saturated market. Your success depends entirely on your ability to find a specific, underserved niche and optimize your product listings for the search algorithm.
Which flows perfectly into idea number 4,
Yeah.
selling digital worksheets. This is a massive market. We are talking about creating printable educational materials, budgeting planners, or organizational worksheets.
The platforms of choice here are Etsy, or for educators, Teachers Pay Teachers.
Whoa, how does that work?
Let's say you are a second-grade teacher. You spend your weekends designing highly engaging, effective phonics worksheets for your classroom. That is active labor.
Right.
But then you upload those PDF files to Teachers Pay Teachers. Other teachers who are desperately short on time will gladly pay $3 or $5 to download your proven lesson plan.
And again, because it's a digital PDF, the marginal cost of duplication is zero. You can sell that same file 10,000 times.
Idea number 5 is similar but targets a different demographic, selling templates. If you are a wizard at Microsoft Excel or Notion, you can build comprehensive, highly functional templates.
Let's give a concrete example of this. Say you work as a project manager in construction. You know exactly how chaotic tracking materials and contractor hours can be. So you spend 40 hours, your sweat equity, building the ultimate automated Notion template specifically designed for construction project management.
It tracks invoices, schedules, and deliverables.
Exactly. You can then sell that digital file online for $40 or $50 to independent contractors who don't have the time to build it themselves.
These 3 ideas, print-on-demand, worksheets, and templates, are prime examples of our pop song analogy. The cost to create them is just your time and your specific expertise. Once uploaded, the digital infrastructure handles the distribution endlessly.
Exactly. Okay, moving on to the third category, the knowledge and content route. Idea number 6 is self-publishing.
This isn't the 1990s where you have to send a manuscript to a dozen publishers and pray for a book deal.
Right. You can write an ebook and publish it directly through Kindle Direct Publishing or KDP.
The sweat equity required here is immense. Writing a cohesive, valuable book takes hundreds of hours of intense focus. Editing and formatting require meticulous attention.
But once the file is uploaded to KDP,
Amazon handles the global distribution, the payment processing, and the delivery to Kindle devices. You earn royalties on every sale.
idea number 7 is creating an online course. This has exploded in recent years.
It really has.
You use platforms like Thinkific, Teachable, or even Coursera itself to package your expertise into a structured curriculum of video modules and downloadable resources.
But we should push back on the hype here. Course creation is often sold as easy passive income, but it is anything but easy.
Why is that?
The production quality expectations are high. You need good audio, clear video, and most importantly, you need a transformative curriculum. If your course doesn't actually help people solve a specific problem, the reviews will tank and the algorithm will bury it.
That's a great point. You have to actually deliver value. You can't just record yourself rambling on a webcam and expect people to pay $200. You are essentially building a digital school.
And idea number 8 in this category is affiliate marketing. This is perhaps one of the most powerful digital assets if done correctly.
Okay, what are the mechanics there?
It's simple. You promote other companies' products or services, and you receive a commission on any sales generated through your unique tracking link.
But how do people actually succeed at this in 2026? Because just spamming links on Twitter doesn't work anymore.
No, it doesn't. The Coursera guide notes that the most successful affiliate marketers build comprehensive, niche-specific websites or blogs. They use search engine optimization, or SEO, to drive organic traffic.
Let's break down SEO for the listener.
SEO is the practice of structuring your website content so that Google recognizes it as the best possible answer to a user's search query.
Can you give an example?
Let's say you build a blog entirely about high-end espresso machines. You write deeply researched 3,000-word reviews comparing different models. You optimize the articles for keywords like best espresso machine for small cafes.
Okay.
When someone searches that term, they have high buyer intent. They are looking to spend money. They find your article, click your affiliate link to Amazon or a specialty retailer, and buy a $2,000 machine.
And you get a cut.
You might make a 5% commission, which is $100, purely because your digital asset intercepted their search intent. The blog itself, ranking high on Google, becomes the cash-flowing asset.
I want to pause for a second. I want to speak directly to you, the listener. We've just covered 8 distinct ways to build an asset. I want you to self-reflect right now.
It's a good time to pause.
What specialized knowledge do you have? Maybe from your day job, maybe from a hobby you've obsessed over for a decade. Do you know how to perfectly tune a mountain bike? Do you know how to organize chaotic HR data into clean spreadsheets?
Everyone has something.
Exactly. Whatever it is, there is someone out there who would happily pay $50 for a template or $100 for a short course, or who is searching Google right now for advice you could provide on an affiliate blog. You have skills that have value. That value can be packaged into an asset.
That is the pivotal realization. Everyone has specialized knowledge. The trick is learning the mechanics of packaging it.
Which brings us to the final category.
Right, the tech and creative writ, which offers even more avenues. Idea number 9 is monetizing YouTube content.
This is the dream for a lot of people, but let's talk about the reality. Once you hit the threshold, which is currently 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 valid public watch hours, you can join the YouTube Partner Program.
And then what?
YouTube places ads on your videos, and you get a split of the revenue, known as CPM or cost per mil.
The beauty of YouTube as an asset is its long-tail nature. A deeply helpful tutorial video on how to fix a leaking LG washing machine might not go viral on day one.
No, probably not.
But it will accumulate steady, search-driven views for 5 years, generating ad revenue continuously from past work. However, the algorithm demands high click-through rates and high retention, meaning your sweat equity goes into mastering thumbnail design and video pacing.
Idea number 10 is selling stock photography or videography. If you are a talented photographer, you don't just post your photos on Instagram for likes.
What do you do instead?
You upload high-resolution files to platforms like Alamy, Shutterstock, or Adobe Stock.
And the key here is metadata. You have to aggressively tag your photos with relevant keywords so that when a corporate marketing team needs a generic image of diverse team collaborating in modern office, your photo appears.
And when they license it for a brochure or website, you get paid.
Exactly.
Finally, idea number 11 is developing a mobile app. If you have coding skills, or if you take the time to learn no-code platforms, which are getting incredibly powerful, you can build a tool or a game, put it on the iOS App Store or Google Play, and collect revenue from initial downloads, in-app purchases, or subscription models.
The app marketplace is fiercely competitive, but a well-designed utility app, say a hyper-specific calculator for a niche industry, can quietly generate substantial passive income for years with minimal updates.
Okay, so we've covered the 11 streams, but earlier you mentioned that the real magic happens when you combine them. Walk me through that.
What is truly powerful and what paints the bigger macroeconomic picture here is that you are not limited to choosing just one. The modern wealth-building playbook is about creating an ecosystem of digital assets that feed into each other.
Give me an example of how that ecosystem works.
Let's say you start with the affiliate marketing blog about espresso machines. You put in the sweat equity, you master SEO, and the blog starts generating $1,000 a month in passive affiliate income.
Okay.
You don't stop there. You take that same knowledge and create a YouTube channel reviewing the machines, linking back to your blog. Now you have ad revenue and increased affiliate sales.
Okay, so the digital assets are stacking.
Exactly. But here is the critical final step. You take the cash flow generated from those digital assets, the blog and the YouTube channel, and you channel it directly into the traditional route.
Oh, wow.
You use your digital income to fund a diversified portfolio of mutual funds, stocks, or even save for a massive down payment on a physical rental property.
So you use zero capital digital assets to generate the cash needed to buy capital-intensive physical assets.
Precisely. That is how the modern middle class can build the asset column Kiyosaki talked about without needing a massive salary or the unattainable 1997 real estate prices.
It's brilliant.
You create digital cash flow to fund traditional financial assets. It creates a robust, diversified, closed-loop system of wealth generation.
It all connects perfectly. The ecosystem feeds itself. So, to seamlessly wrap up this entire massive through line today, we started by identifying the macro problem.
The lack of systemic financial education creates a fragile economy and personal inequality.
But taking ownership of your own financial literacy, learning the rules of the board game, is the cure.
We then looked at the foundational framework. A book like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, despite the author's current controversies, offers the exact correct psychological mindset.
Right. You absolutely must prioritize acquiring cash-flowing assets over cash-draining liabilities, and you must train your brain to ask how rather than accepting defeat.
But crucially, we realized that mindset must be filtered through a 2026 lens. You have to replace the outdated, highly leveraged physical real estate advice with the accessible digital passive income streams available to us today.
You trade financial capital for sweat equity.
Ultimately, your financial resilience does not come from finding a magical guru or a secret real estate trick.
Where does it come from?
It comes from working to learn, acquiring high-leverage skills like SEO or copywriting, and permanently changing your default mental setting from, I can't afford this, to, how can I build a digital asset that pays for this?
Which leaves us with a fascinating prospect to consider about the future of wealth.
It does. If creating digital assets like templates, courses, and content is now practically free in terms of capital, we are rapidly moving into an era where the ultimate scarce resource on the planet isn't financial capital at all.
It is human attention.
Exactly. This raises an important question for you to ponder long after this audio stops. In the future, will the global wealth divide be based on who has the most money in the bank, or simply who has the best algorithm and the most compelling content to distribute their digital assets to the world?
That is something to seriously chew on. The architecture of wealth is fundamentally changing, and you now have the blueprint to start building it yourself today. Thank you so much for joining us on this extensive deep dive into financial literacy and the reality of modern assets. Keep learning, keep building, and we will catch you on the next one.